Could there be a Terrell brother reunion in Atlanta? We're breaking down some of the top draft talents that could slide to the Falcons in round two.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast. And of course, I'm your humble host, Aaron Freeman, aka the Jolly Green Giant. And on today's Daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, we are joined by none other than Kevin Knight of the Falcoholic, as well as the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. If you missed yesterday's episode, we had Kevin on. And, yesterday's episode, we talked about the sort of sudden retirement of Caleb McGarry, as well as the signing of Jawan Taylor. We talked with Kevin about some of the early round targets, but we recorded this episode with Kevin about 30 minutes before that McGarry news broke. And so want to give that context just because we're finishing that conversation with Kevin about, some potential early round guys that might not see their draft stock as high that could slide to the Falcons at 42, including AJ Terrell's younger brother, Avieon Terrell, at the cornerback position. And then later we'll get into, some of the trade back options for the Falcons, as well as some late round targets. But, part of the conversation that you're going to hear Kevin and I talk about is like, offensive tackle is not that big a need, but I just want to give the context that we recorded that before news of McGarry's retirement broke. So without further ado, let's jump into that conversation talking about some of the players that could slide in round two with Kevin Knight right now. Seen some recent buzz about Avieon Terrell not necessarily being the lock of a first round corner. Dane Brugler's The Beast just dropped on Wednesday, and I think he had Terrell as his CB4 or 5, where I think early in the process he was kind of consistently CB3 in this draft class. That is owed seemingly to some slow 40 times. He suffered a hamstring injury. The Falcons were on hand at his pro day, where he ran in the 4.6 range, which is obviously very slow for a cornerback. Typically, corners you want to run sub 4.5, particularly if you want to be an outside corner. Terrell being a little smaller, so has that inside outside flexibility. But he's a handful of guys. Other names that I've discussed on this podcast: Caleb Banks, the Florida defensive tackle; CJ Allen, the Georgia linebacker, who's now 46th on Dane Brugler's top 100 in the Beast that dropped today. Caleb Banks, number 52. I think Terrell is still in the top 32 for Dane Brugler, but it's like number 34 for Daniel Jeremiah in his most recent update in his rankings. But whether those three guys or maybe another name or two, Kevin, in your eyes, is it worth the Falcons kind of sticking and picking, waiting to see if one of these, potentially top 30, 40 type prospects in this draft class fall to them at 48?
Yeah, I mean, I think Avieon Terrell, like you said it, I think that's a guy that they would be doing jumping jacks for, not just because of the connection. I mean, it's like, yeah, we got great stuff out of one Terrell. We might as well just keep going back to that well. But he just fits what they like, I think. And again, that inside-outside flexibility, I think he's just a really good corner. So yeah, if other teams decide like, oh, he's too small, he's too slow, whatever, I think the Falcons would be very happy there. So that's one for sure I would be in on. CJ Allen, like I guess I get it a little bit with, he hasn't necessarily like tested out the best, but I kind of feel like Georgia linebacker are just always going to go towards the end of the first round. Somebody's going to make that happen. So that's what I'm not as convinced will be likely to be there. But some of the other guys you mentioned, I mean, I think Caleb Banks is one for sure that like that injury could absolutely cause him to fall. And I think he absolutely just fits what the Falcons like on the defensive line. They love the size. I don't think they necessarily need him to be an immediate contributor. Like if he was suffering, setbacks or anything like that, they could afford to just let him ride for a year. But yeah, that's a guy that I would absolutely love to get in here as well. I know Peter Woods has been tumbling down boards too. Not like sure he's they're going to go get another one of these guys. Like, it's like, we have Brandon Dorlus at home. Okay. Like, we don't necessarily need another Peter Woods, and not sure, but they do tend to like those, they don't mind the undersized defensive tackles so much. So he could be someone that they look at. Again, like a guy like Christian Miller, who I think some people think is a first rounder. Some people have him as more of a second rounder. He's one that absolutely makes a ton of sense if he's there. Caleb Lomu's kind of been sliding slightly. So again, maybe you do get lucky in a tackle like Lomu or Iheanachor is there. But yeah, I think you named a lot of the best ones. And I guess another one now that apparently would be, it's tough to see this guy fall into Atlanta. I haven't seen it lately. Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker who tested out of this world. I think that was like his one concern was like, he's a little undersized, and how good of an athlete is he? Well, apparently he's an amazing athlete. And he also just has the best linebacker tape of anybody in the class. So if Jacob Rodriguez gets hit with the linebacker, linebackers tend to fall, especially undersized ones. That one I think is like a slam dunk. Let's just get our linebacker situation taken care of. I think Rodriguez just looks like one of those classic day 2 linebackers that's just going to hit the ground running. So he's definitely one I would be keeping an eye on as well, because his stock just seems to continue to climb.
Now, I'm curious, Kevin, and obviously, we'll have to see how it all plays out. But, you know, I look at, you look at a position like offensive tackle, because it's not necessarily perceived to be as strong a year. There's a lot of good players towards the top of the draft, but it does feel like we're probably going to get a run on offensive tackles sometime starting in the middle of the first round. And that could push up some of these guys that, would normally be second round players, like an Iheanachor, a Caleb Tiernan, Caleb Lomu, as you mentioned, Tiernan from Northwestern, Lomu from Utah. Is he the Utah guy?
I think Lomu's Utah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's like Fanos. I know Fanos from Utah, and there's another Utah guy. And I'm like, is it Lomu? I think it's Lomu. Clearly I haven't been paying that much attention because I don't have that memorized. But I'm curious, whether it's offensive tackle or another position group, do you feel like there's a chance that we might see a run of guys early that could, maybe dry up the talent pool for the Falcons as they sit there in round 2 and that becomes an issue for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think wide receiver and tackle are the ones you're the most concerned about. Wide receiver has a lot more depth, so like you could probably talk yourself into someone at 48, like even if there is a bit of a run. But yeah, once you get past Lomu and Iheanachor, again, there's like a couple of guys like Tiernan and Dunker who I think are probably moving inside, and then there's this gulf. So to me, I think the Falcons are probably just, unless they get really lucky, going to have to wait. But I think the 4th round for tackle is definitely where we could see a pick. I think there's just a number of prospects in that range that all seem like really good. Here, Bill Callahan, take this guy for a year and just get him up to speed, and we'll see what we got next year. But I think the other one to worry about, at 48 is wide receiver. And I'm sure we'll talk about potential trade downs and stuff, but that's a situation where if these wide receivers do go early, you're looking to move down a little bit, get one of these sort of early 3rd round receivers instead. I think there's a number of receivers that I would consider at 48, but then also like by the time you get to 79, it's like, oh wait, like if we don't get some good luck here, we might be looking at reaching on another wide receiver at this point. So, they've kind of set themselves up to where they really need to get an early receiver, whether that's in the 2nd or the 3rd. So how that board falls is going to be really important.
Now, you mentioned a couple of tackles that could be there in round 4. Any names you want to drop for the listeners that you have your eyes on?
Yeah, I mean, Markel Bell from Miami, 6'9", this absolute giant of a person. Someone that, again, needs a season for sure. But it makes a lot of sense. I think J.C. Davis from Illinois, another guy that has the size, has some good tape, but very inconsistent, particularly as a pass blocker at times, and could just really use a year of refinement. Austin Barber, similarly, Isaiah World, those are all guys I think that kind of fit that mark of like big developmental tackles to just give to your, potential Hall of Fame offensive line coach that you just brought in and give him a season to really make his mark on this offensive line.
Yeah. We'll see if the Falcons go in that direction, I do think they do definitely want to walk away from this draft with an offensive tackle, as you mentioned, to give them an option, a pivot point for 2027. I just think, as you mentioned, it's just really going to kind of depend on if do we get that early run, and does that mean that the Falcons then wait on a tackle, and then do we get like a second run in like the third or fourth round where it's like, oh well, we got to get our fourth round guy in the third round because another run is, so those are all the things that are always hard to kind of figure out about the draft. And on that note, one of the things that's always hard to predict is trade opportunities. There's always teams looking to move up. There's always teams looking to move down. And we sort of expect the Falcons to be one of those teams looking to move down in the draft, accumulate more draft picks. But I want to kind of pick Kevin's brain on sort of what he expects when it comes to trade back opportunities, possible trade up opportunities, and sort of where does he think is kind of the sweet spot for the Falcons to move back in this draft. And we'll do that to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. The NBA playoffs are just around the corner, and the playoff time is when every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. All you got to do is bet just $5, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. And the FanDuel app is going to make it easy to follow all the action with the player stats, the trends, the matchups, all in one place. Whether you're looking at game picks, futures, same game parlays to mix and match for bigger potential payouts, it's all there for you at FanDuel. And of course, during the playoffs, that extra insight is really what matters when you're looking at the stars, the role players, and all those key moments. It's just going to make the entire playoff experience that much more engaging from start to finish. So head on over to FanDuel.com right now to get started. Again, new customers get $250 in bonus bet if that first $5 bet wins. FanDuel, play your game. Kevin, I've gone on record here on Locked On Falcons, basically setting the over-under on how many picks the Falcons walk away from this draft with at 7.5, and I'm taking the over on that. I think we'll get to 8 picks by the end, but I'm curious, are you taking the over or are you taking the under on that designation?
Over. I mean, look, this guy's already matched Ian Cunningham's already matched Terry Fontenot's trade downs before the draft even started. So, I think he's clearly interested in moving down. Part of me wonders, the Falcons are such an obvious trade down team, and we have a first-time GM. So I think they're going to get lowballed at 48 by a lot of teams that are like, these guys need picks. Like, let's just, they're going to have to take some offers here. So I wonder if they have to kind of set the boundary a little bit. Like, we're not going to get lowballed and we will turn you down, and kind of have to put their foot down at 48. So to me, it's like, I wonder if 79 is really where this trade happens, because teams are like, okay, that didn't work. We're going to have to maybe pony up a little bit more. But whether it's second round, third round, even later, I mean, I think we've seen, unlike Fontenot, that Cunningham actually does value later picks. Like he actually does think there's value to getting some extra 6th or 7th or whatever. And he's not just trying to get rid of those picks at all costs. We could see trade downs later in the draft, whether that's, the 4th round pick. Oh, we move down a little bit and pick up another, 7th rounder or 6th rounder to help build out this roster. Maybe we get some future picks or what have you. But to me, if you're maximizing the value, you're definitely hoping to get a good offer for 48 to move, 10, 15 spots down, maybe get an extra day 2 pick out of that deal. But I think that 3rd rounder, you can pick up 4th round picks from a trade down there that will also really help you. I mean, we mentioned this offensive tackle. Like, it would be nice to have some extra picks to be able to grab a tackle and maybe grab some other positions. But yeah, I would be absolutely shocked if they're not trading down at least once in this draft. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, you can't just trade down over and over again. That's ridiculous. Well, I mean, lots of teams do it. Like, we've seen the Eagles just keep trading down like aggressively. And I do wonder if we'll see a total shift in philosophy here with Cunningham, where it's like, hey, we've got 8 guys left on our board. Somebody wants us to move down 5 picks. Let's do it. Pick up a 6th rounder, and we'll just let's let it ride. I don't mind doing that. And before, I think the Falcons were sort of closed for business, and I think they will be open for business going forward.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with Josh Kendall of The Athletic a couple of weeks ago about and sort of piggybacking on the point we were discussing earlier, where it's like there may be good players available at pick 48 that may, you know, may not necessarily push you into the direction of trading back. Like maybe you trade back, one or two spots and pick up a six or something rather than, the big 10 or 15 spot trade back that I think, gets, has some sex appeal when you're running your mock draft simulations and you're picking up like a future third or fourth or something like that. But like more likely you're going to potentially get better offers, as you mentioned, later in the draft. And I'm curious, Kevin, because I know some people, when I've discussed that on the podcast, are like, yeah, what's the big deal? Adding a couple of 6th and 7th round picks, that's not really moving the needle for this football team. And I think that's a fair assessment. But, I think with needing to want to build depth, getting guys in the building that are going to be able to, supplant some of these 1-year deals that the Falcons are signing so that you can sort of be like, okay, well, this first year, that guy might be a special teams player, but then in year 2, he might be able to move up into that key depth role or something like that. I'm curious, how do you sort of see the value of late round picks for this football team in this particular draft? Is there value to those guys and adding, a handful of 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks for the Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, I think adding darts to throw is always a good idea. You're sort of changing your expectations every round later in the draft. You're changing your expectations for what you're getting. Like it's not, well, every pick has to be a starter, because once you get past the 4th round, you have to really squint sometimes to be able to like foresee a starting path for some of these players. Not to say that they're not good players, but they may be more specialized with what they can do. They may have limitations that require them to play a rotational role. They may be actual specialists, like return specialists or kickers or punters or what have you that could technically start, but are they giving you the value of a starter? So I definitely see value in day 3 picks. Also because you can use them as, an option to get veterans. I mean, we saw the Falcons move back in the draft a few spots on day 3 and get a veteran player in return. Terry Fontenot was obviously really obsessed with trading away his day 3 picks for veterans, and that track record was spotty, but you can do that with those picks too. You don't necessarily have to draft with every single one of them, but I think you get more of them. You have more options. They can also be packaged in trade ups or other trade downs to give you more flexibility. But I think filling your roster with draft picks is typically the best way to build depth, because again, you have team control for 4 years and you're really set up well because the cost is obviously very low for the day 3 picks too. And I think having more opportunities, more bites at the apple is the way to win, quote unquote, the draft, because even the best drafters are hitting 50%, right? I mean, we're talking about 50% success rate overall. So if you add more picks, that gives you more opportunities to be successful, and it helps soften the blow, if you do happen to miss on guys. But it's tough to find major contributors in the 7th round, the 6th round, but I think just because each individual pick doesn't necessarily change you from a 7-win to an 8-win team, 3 of them can. Like if you have 2 6th and a 7th that you didn't have before, those guys might contribute enough to get you to the next level, or they might improve your special teams, enough to get you there. So each individual move is contributing to a bigger whole, and you have to make these little adjustments, these little wins, these things that move the needle just a hair, that you can't really see it, but that 6th rounder and that other 6th rounder from a year ago, you add them together and now all of a sudden you're moving in the right direction. And this is the NFL, every single small advantage that you could get can add up to being the difference between, getting to the playoffs and actually winning in the playoffs. So, the margins are thin. So I think you try to maximize every single asset and advantage that you can. And you could get guys on day 3. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. So,
yeah, I think definitely that's true. And there's still more to come as we look at some of the special teams impact players that could potentially be on the Falcons' radar in the late rounds. We'll pick Kevin's brain on some of the guys he has his eyes on coming up to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So it's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve. Well, you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. I have to thank you, Kevin, because I know in one of the mocks you did this offseason, you had the Falcons taking Riley Nowakowski, the Indiana tight end, late in the draft, and I watched him, and I'm like, this is fullback-ish, This is what I like. Yeah. And so I'm just curious. I bring that up just because he's on my radar of like late round guys, maybe that 5th, 6th round range. I have a tight end that has some, versus positional flexibility to play a little tight end, a little inline, a little flex, a little fullback or whatever, just kind of be a little bit of a chess piece as a blocker and whatnot, and has a little bit of juice that can add some value as a pass catcher. But I'm curious, are there other sort of late round gems that you have your sort of eye on that you're just kind of like, I kind of like this guy, and if he lands in Atlanta, I would love that.
Yeah, I think mostly I look at special teams, with those final picks, not necessarily like kickers and punters. Although that I'm leaving that to Trayshawn, he can have those guys in his mock draft. But for me, it's like return specialists, because yes, I know that Zacchaeus can return and Jahan Dotson, they're talking about him returning and all this, but they've just been like papering over returner like for years. And it's like, maybe just draft the best returner. Like, stop like waiting to see if that returner wants to come here in UDFA. Just draft the best returner and we'll go from there. There's several good ones in this class. Caden Wedgen is really good returner. And he's that scrappy slot receiver that they don't really have right now. So I know, Aaron, every team's got room for a big, for a white scrappy slot receiver. So we don't have one at the moment. So we need to fill that void as fast as possible. But I think Colin Lacey, who was at the Senior Bowl, he's another guy that I like as just as a return specialist that can give you a little bit as a slot receiver too. But I think getting looking at maybe a depth running back here is another one that I like. And I think the Falcons have sort of the luxury of a guy like a Rasul Faison, who is 26 years old. He's that's why he's probably getting drafted in the 7th round. But this is a good running back, like a very good running back. I think a lot of teams will kind of shy away because they're like, I'm not really going to invest in a 26-year-old running back. The Falcons aren't giving any other running back a second contract. So like, I don't think they care if you only play 4 years and then you walk, similar to a Tyler Algier. Like, as long as they've got Bijan, they just need good running backs. And like, you're going to play your time here and then you're going to get another contract, and good luck to you. But I just think he's a very good running back. And I think the age for the Falcons just doesn't really matter. So I think they have the flexibility to go for some of these running backs that other teams might kind of shy away from because they have the luxury of Bijan Robinson. Boy, what a luxury that is. So.
That it is. Yeah, I was going to say something snarky, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to let it go. We'll
save that. The snark will come.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so appreciate it, Kevin, coming in, sharing your insights into these potential options for the Falcons in round 2, and it'll be a dull night 1, probably more than likely.
Maybe he's actually Terry Fontenot is going to trade their entire draft to get back in the first round.
Maybe. Oh boy.
I'm not just saying that because I'll be live all night on day 1, and we need something to talk about. So
yeah. I will appreciate it for the content. We'll We'll see if he, Mike Ditka's this thing and trades it all for Ricky Williams or whatever. We got to get Jeremiah Love. Two Bichons is better than one, right?
How could you stop it? Who says no? Yeah.
50 runs a game and 3 passes a game. That's how you protect Tua and Michael Penix from injury. You just only ask them.
Don't even have him on the field. Just direct snap.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. So, all right. Silliness aside, appreciate you coming on and talking about this. And we'll see what the Falcons do on draft day. Go ahead and plug whatever you want to plug, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, guys. Well, we are going to, of course, have Falcoholic Live on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Aaron will be joining us there soon. We're going to be doing a live mock draft, our first live mock draft of the season, so you guys can get excited about that. But we'll also have Tuesday Takes on Tuesdays with Trayshawn Diaz, who was just on this program as well. And then, we will also, of course, be live through all 3 days of the draft on our draft live stream, giving away $50 NFL shop cards on each night of the draft. So you can come on in and throw your hat in the ring for those, but just going to be hanging out. Might just be hanging out on night one. May not be a lot of Falcons picks to discuss, but I think we're going to have pretty active day 2 and day 3, more active certainly than years past. Maybe that'll make up for it. Maybe not. But Ian Cunningham's got a lot of expectations. This guy's traded down once already to whet the appetite. Fontenot did that and just never did it again and just teased us mercifully. Just never did it again. Just like, oh yeah, I can show you that I know this exists, but I just choose not to use it. So Ian Cunningham has a chance to already break Fontenot's trade down record by just doing it once, doing it one more time. So I'm excited to see what happens.
So, guys, that's going to do it for us here. Thanks to Kevin Knight for rolling with the punches, as we had to, make an in-game audible with the Kaleb McGary stuff on yesterday's episode, but wanted to get that episode up available for you. Your next episode should feature Jarvis Davis of Locked On Georgia Tech. Talk more about Kaleb McGary's retirement, Jawan Taylor, all that stuff, and more. And so that's in store for you on your next episode. Make sure you don't miss it. And, of course, if you don't miss a single episode of Locked On Falcons, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get, ad-free version of Locked On Falcons, premium exclusive members only Discord access, as well as some sweet Locked On merch. So go check it out at the link in the description below, as well as other perks. You can find it at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com. It's all part Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.